Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2018 Toronto International Film Festival. My name is Michael Lerman. I'm the Senior Manager of Festival Programming here, and I'm on the Platform Selection Committee that this film is in. And welcome to this repeat screening of our platform opening night film, Donnybrook. Before we start, I just want to acknowledge that we are right now on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of New Credit and the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, and we are so thankful to be working with the community today and every day of every year. I want to remind you that this film is eligible for the Grolsch People's Choice Award. So to vote, go to tiff.net/vote and cast your vote there. And I want to very quickly thank United Talent Agency and Sierra Affinity for providing us with the print and for being such great partners through putting this together. When we're putting the platform section together, what we're always looking for is the voices that elevate out of all of the noise. They're the loudest, they scream the loudest as filmmakers to watch, to pay attention to. And through a large number of films that came in this year about the state of America today and just beautiful but very tough filmmaking, this one sang so beautifully, and so it is with great pleasure that I bring to the stage right now director Tim Sutton.
Thank you so much. Is this on? Try this one. Thank you so much. This is definitely on. Well, first of all, thank you to the audience for being here. You have a spectacular city that I've really been enjoying the past couple days, so thanks for taking time out from that to sit in a dark room and watch a very dark film. I'd love to thank the Toronto Film Festival and especially the programming team. To play platform at TIFF is a real honor. I've never played the festival before, and to come in with a film like this and have it positioned the way they have has been just a spectacular honor. My financiers, Backup Media, Joel Debu, and David Atlan-Jackson were great partners. My producers, David Lancaster and Stephanie Wilcox, really delivered for me. David Lancaster is a legend. I mean, this is his 45th movie, and I just learned so much from him. UTA as a whole really supported me, especially Nick Shoemaker. Andre Desrochers, my lawyer, really was just like guided me through this process. All three of my films before this film, the budgets were $800,000 combined. So this was a bigger platform and a bigger canvas, and I really had a lot of help putting it together. My cast, Jamie Bell, Frank Grillo, Margaret Qualley, James Badgedale, they deliver performances that you will not soon forget, and I'm so proud of that. The movie is dark, but within that darkness, you can often find just incredible, intense, great beauty, and I hope that I have in this film, and I hope it connects to you. I'll be back for a Q&A afterwards, and the film does well with the Q&A, so I hope you stick around. But thanks again for taking time to watch the film.
I'd like to welcome back to the stage Tim Sutton.
Thank you.
I guess I wanted to start by asking about the role of violence in the film. Because I had a film professor who talked to me a lot about violence as mise en scène, and I think that in some ways a lot of the story and the character arcs are told through violence. Yeah. And I wanted to know where that came in the script writing stage, what was the thinking, and also, it's not something that's been as prevalent in your work like it is here, so how your choice is to handle it this way.
Well, first of all, thank you for staying for the Q&A. Violence is the film, and the film is violence. From the book, it's originally an adaptation of Frank Bill's novel, Donnybrook, which is a great crime fiction novel. That violence is on the first page, on the first paragraph, in the first sentence. So it is embedded in the film. And so one of the things that I found really challenging was instead of trying to work around that in any way was to attack it like it was my native language. Like it was, that Jamie Bell is not the lead character, but the idea of violence is the lead character. My film before this, Dark Knight, deals with the threat of violence. And the difference between these two movies is essentially that this is a movie about the act of violence. And I also think, take the book aside, take the screenplay aside, there is no way out of this film other than through violence. You cannot reason your way, you cannot talk your way, and you have to struggle and fight to survive. So it's within this film, but I think the reason that it leaks outside of the screen into the audience or into the culture is that it's a universal feeling. I mean, yes, we don't all stab the nice Christian man who picks us up on the side of the road, but we've all have to fight in our own way. I had to fight to get this movie made, and we all have that fight to survive. And I think that's one of the powerful things about the movie is that it does translate into something personal.
The other element that strikes me as an undercurrent, even though it's never fully pushed out, is the element of race. In this way that it is a very white movie, and especially the climax on the compound. But yet it ends with this reference to the Civil War and all these things. And you've talked about race a little bit in your work before. I feel like you're not a filmmaker who's shy of it, who hasn't been aware of it within your work. So I wanted to know what you were thinking in terms of, as you were putting this together, thinking about race in this movie.
Sure. The essential moment of the movie, what the movie is truly all about, is when the Star Spangled Banner is playing and you're listening to Land of the Free while you're looking at 20 white men in a cage while the World Trade Center burns in the background. I mean, that is essentially what the movie is about. It is about the confusion, the anger, the struggle, and the feeling of being left behind of a lot of these people who happen to be white Americans. I didn't want characters outside of that community in the same way that with Memphis, there's no white character in the movie. It's a completely African-American film. And I think that way I'm able to focus in on a certain community without having it be a movie about misrepresentation or about also about pandering towards a kind of political correctness. This is a movie about these people, and to me, there's a lot of good people in this movie, but it is not a movie about the deplorables or the people who are in the Steve Bannon movie that I just caught a little bit of next door. These are about people who I grew up with. At the same time, I grew up in a community, there was no black families. I grew up in upstate New York. And in a way, I think the movie boils down to what these people are facing, and in many ways, they're facing themselves. That's why The Cage Match is about a bunch of people really fighting themselves. And so race is a part of the film. It's suggested in the film, but it's on the other hand, there's no white nationalism in the film. It is just a film about a community of people.
I want to open it up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions? It's right there.
I have one question about the choreography for that final brawl match.
Thank you.
How long did it take for choreograph that reverse that to get ready for camera?
So just for the rest of the audience, the question was about how long it took to build the choreography for the final brawl scene to get it ready for camera.
All right. This was the first time I did fighting or stunts or a set piece of any kind of thing. So the first thing I did was I went to the producer and I said, could we get 20 people in the ring and really fight? And they said no, because there's this thing called insurance. And you have Jamie Bell and Frank Grillo in there, and what if one of them gets punched in the face? And it's like, okay. Then I had stunt coordinators who ended up doing a very good job, but they came to me and they said, here's all these moves we could have the people do. And they were doing like all these karate chops. And and backflips and stuff like that. And so what I did is I showed them these YouTube videos of Russian gangs fighting in the outskirts of Moscow. If you ever want to get scared about the future of the world, Google Russian gang fights. It's about 20 people on one side and 20 people on another side, and they walk closer and closer toward each other. And then all of a sudden, it becomes this one form, this mass of pulverization, of destruction, and it is horrifying. So I went to the producers and I went to the stunt coordinators and I said, if it doesn't look like this, the whole movie fails. And this is not a fight movie. This is a movie about, this is a road movie in many ways. I think of this movie much more like Apocalypse Now than I do Fight Club. But they went back and then started rehearsing with some just non-actors, some stuntmen fighters. And it was a 21-day shoot. I mean, I had no time to do this. So they rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. They had one full day on set rehearsal with Frank and Jamie. But the main reason I think it works is because of not editing as far as editing the movie, but like editing what the stunt coordinators wanted to do and keep stripping it away and keep stripping it away until it felt like people just trying to kill themselves and kill each other.
It's a quiet, stunned house right here.
It's not an easy film to think.
About the role of the police guy, the sheriff.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about what he represented? Because it seemed like absolute futility.
Yeah.
So the question was about the role of the cop inside the story and what he represents.
Well, I wrote the character to try and feel like John Wayne on crack. Like I wanted this lawman that in any other movie you've seen is going to be victorious and is going to be able to figure out the crime. But this time and this day and this man represents an utter failure of law, that there is no law. And so you think at a certain point he's going to come and bring it all together, and he just takes a bullet and dies the loneliest death I could possibly give him. And I think that's because where the Donnybrook lives, and I don't just mean the cage match, I mean that area, let's say the heartland, I think there's a sense of lawlessness or futility of law to stop the opioid crisis, to stop crime, to lift people up in some way. And I wanted to have this person have so much on his mind and have so wanting to do something right, but not being anywhere near at any time solving a single clue of the crime. And you know, James Badgedale, who's played cops before, he was like, I never want to play a cop again. And I read your script and I was like, he's not a cop. He's a failure. And that's what got him into the role.
Right here.
You mentioned the opioid crisis. It's clearly there in the movie, and it's very, it's what's going on here in Canada to a certain extent, in the U.S. to perhaps a larger extent. Was that on purpose that you had that integrated in the movie? I've never read the book, so I don't know, but it's part of the whole story. And I was just wondering what part it played in
Sure.
So the question was about the role of the opioid crisis in putting together the story. Sort of, was it in the book? Did you add the element?
Right.
Was it important? How important was it?
The book deals with a lot of meth, and I did a little bit of research on meth in America, and at the same time I was shooting around Cincinnati when they had it's the center, it's the nucleus of the opioid crisis. So I did some research and like some news stories and stuff. It's in the book. It's in the screenplay. It's not. The most important thing is I didn't want to sensationalize it. The worst thing I think I see in a movie is when someone smokes a cigarette and they're cool, or does a line and they're awesome, or I think Trainspotting's the last movie that can possibly do that, and it's an irresponsible act as a filmmaker and as a human being to do that, but to show it as part of the landscape. So it's part of the physical and emotional and political and social landscape, just like the trees are, just like the cage is, just like the river is. And I just wanted it to be an authentic part that's part of the thing that's dragging these people down.
looking. It's very, very.
I came all the way from
Right
New
here?
York, so ask away.
It's okay. I got plenty of questions. Yeah.
Just a quick question about your choice of music at the start, very classical, operatic opening. Why did you choose that particular piece of music for the story?
So the question was about the piece of music at the beginning and the operatic quality of the opening.
What do you think of the music?
That sounds great. Made it a very classical story about man who's most tribal.
Yeah.
Elevating it to rawness.
Well, I think you're onto something. I think with a movie that has a story and a landscape that's so raw and so dark that I didn't want it to be just matching that. I wanted it to be something grand, and at the same time, I wanted it to feel like a requiem. And so my composer, Phil Mossman, who I think does a tremendous job, is versed in classical orchestration as well as electronic, as well as death metal. But we listened to Chopin's Funeral March. And there's a part in the Funeral March, not just the dun, 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 but there's this part that you rarely hear about, which is this lovely, lovely lilting piano that is complete juxtaposition of the first part. And I asked him to try and make something like that, make something sad and beautiful and dark, but not just doomy. At the same time, I wanted something large, something grand. I want the movie to feel like an epic, and that's, I think, works when you have that kind of score. I'd never worked with a score in this fashion. It was a 75-piece orchestra. I found it harrowing to kind of take that leap. But we said with this movie that we were going to try and take a big swing or on all of it, or nothing at all. So we kind of went large with the score. And I feel confident with it. I like the way that it lifts the story into this kind of more mythic feeling.
Right here.
Two questions. Was the red background with the title and then seeing it on the next shot, like almost like a 3D film, intentional? Where the text shows up?
Yes. Thank you.
It was so beautiful.
It plays a trick on your eyes.
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so subtle and beautiful. And the broken grass with the balance of the nature scene, it was just exquisite. It was almost like a ballet in terms of the timing and the pacing.
Thank you.
And how many takes did the light in the tear of the sister in the car take? Or was it?
During the suicide attempt?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, that's all Margaret. That was the first day of shooting. She wasn't even supposed to put the gun in her mouth. She was supposed to contemplate killing Frank. It was her birthday. And I said, I think you ought to put the gun in your mouth. And Margaret is the type of person who's like, yeah, that's a great idea. That's one take. We were I had to fight to get moments like this, just where everybody would kind of back off and let me and my DP be with the actress, just the three of us. And we did 2 takes. What you're watching is the first take. And, Margaret doesn't mess around. When she gets in that situation, she becomes that situation. And I think, I can't see someone else her age and her quality of acting taking a risk. She took risk after risk in this movie, and I think that's the soul of the movie. But 2 takes.
How many takes did you have to do of the Pat Healy death scene? I feel like that's the
4 or 5, but we used different angles as well.
Yeah.
And again, fighting for that last, we were fighting overtime constantly, and I was like going to be the director who did not send the film into overtime because I want to make more movies. And if you're the guy who sends it into overtime, you're not going to make more movies. So it was very important to be efficient. And Pat Healy is cast because he's such a pro. Yeah. So you knew that Pat Healy, he came in from One Day, from a TV show in Atlanta. He showed up blonde, fantastic, and he took off his pants and got in there and he was just there from the beginning. And the best part of that scene to me is that it's a romance. It's romantic. It's their version of love. And when he giggles to her and they have their little giggling moment, that's like two lovers cooing to each other. And only the chemistry between Margaret and Pat could have put that together in such a lack of time.
We can take one more. I'll go right here.
I really enjoyed your film. Thank you. Most favorite thing is the relationship between Jamie's character and his son. And I was thinking about how many incredibly heavy themes that character is being confronted with, played by a young child actor. And I know that that's something that is traditionally very challenging. And I was wondering if there was anything special you did to get those child actors.
So the question was about how you worked with the child actor and put them within the heavy themes, the special relationship between him and Jamie.
Well, my background is working with non-actors. My first movie, Pavilion's all with 14-year-old boys and a couple of girls, and none of them are actors. And I asked them if they wanted to read the script, and they said no. So then I realized, like, oh, they just want to be in a movie. And so I figured out a way to work with children mainly, which was, it's all, first of all, who you cast. Alex was not at the casting session for all these kids. There were 20 kids on video, and I noticed there was a kid in the way back of the cafeteria staring out the window in the video, and I was like, who's that kid? Go find that kid. In Memphis, I cast the kid who got bored during the interview and started looking at the ceiling. Because the last thing you want is the stage mom actor kid who's like ready to just do it. And especially with the films that I make. But I come up with an idea of what they're supposed to be, and I find a kid who can embody that, or who can change that in a way that I find interesting. And then I don't tell him to act. I tell him where to sit, or I tell him where he is. I don't give him a lot of lines. And I say, when I say action, it's up to you. And when I say cut, we can talk about it. But it's giving up the power of control that makes these performances, especially with non-actors and kids, work. Secondly, Jamie Bell is a father. He was cast because he's a father. And so I'd see him spending a lot of time with the character of Moses. And in a way, working with Jamie, I allowed him, or I didn't even allow him, but he kind of ghost directs some of those scenes. He gets him ready. When Jamie's saying, you did all right, you did good, it's not whether Jamie's saying that to Moses in the scene or he's saying that to Alex, saying like, you're doing great, buddy, don't worry about it. So there's this very gray area between performance and just a kid being a kid. And I think you can't do that if you're making Annie. You know what I mean? But you can do that in a film like this when you're looking for authenticity. You just have to take yourself out of the equation and let the kid be.
Well, I think we're out of time, but I want to thank you so much for coming and bringing the film to us.
Thank you so much, and thank you for Toronto for having me.